So the reading today from the Christian scriptures comes from the book of Acts. And it may sound familiar because I read the same passage a couple weeks ago. But I'm not just insulting your intelligence. There's a different point to reading it this time. So let us listen, hopefully with fresh ears today, as we listen to the day of Pentecost. When the day of Pentecost had come, they were all together in one place. And suddenly from heaven there came a sound like the rush of a violent wind, and it filled the entire house where they were sitting. Divided tongues as of fire appeared among them, and a tongue rested on each of them. All of them were filled with the Holy Spirit and began to speak in other languages as the Spirit gave them ability. Now there were devout Jews from every nation under heaven living in Jerusalem. And at this sound the crowd gathered and was bewildered, because each one heard them speaking in the native language of each. Amazed and astonished, they asked, "Are not all these who are speaking Galileans? And how is it that we hear each of us in our own native languages? Parthians and Medes, Elamites and residents of Mesopotamia, Judea and Cappadocia, Pontus and Asia, Phrygia and Pamphylia, Egypt and the parts of Libya belonging to Cyrene, and visitors from Rome, both Jews and proselytes, Cretans and Arabs, in our own languages, we hear them speaking about God's deeds of power." All were amazed and perplexed, saying to one another, "What does this mean?" So it's good to be back up in the pulpit here, up in front. And one of the highlights of my week off was watching the NBA Finals. Anybody watch the games? Now, many of you know that I'm a huge basketball fan, and that was a great series. Oh my goodness, I almost had a heart attack at least 5 times. And I don't always, I try to keep back from using sports metaphors in church because it just kind of can get onerous and not everybody are sports fans. But it's Father's Day. And the Knicks won the championship for the first time in like 53 years. Now, I'm a newer Knicks fan. My wife is a diehard Knicks fan over many, many years. But one of the things I really enjoyed about watching the Knicks, some of you may remember this from the glory of the Golden State Warriors, but they played with such a chemistry. And each one of them is a remarkably different player. And yet they came together. Their star, Jalen Brunson, he was said to be too small, so I can resonate with that. I was a small basketball player. But he scored 45 points in the final game. Nobody gave him a chance, and yet here he was, the MVP of the final game. Josh Hart, he can't shoot that 3 ball really well, but dang, he hustled and rebounded and dominated the court. Mitchell Robinson cannot shoot a free throw to save his life. And yet his defense and rebounding, stunning block shots kept him in the game. The backup players came in, played their roles beautifully, and they all worked together. All of them, very different players with very different gifts and attributes, and yet they played as a team in unity in a wonderful way. They played in a unified way, playing as one. Different, very diverse, incredibly different kinds of folks, but playing together as one team. And a couple of weeks ago, I preached on the idea of the Trinity after Pentecost, and that God is a God of relationship and relating both internally with God's self and relating with us and in us. So today I want to do a little bit deeper dive on a particular piece of that, which is that the ways of Spirit are about that unity while not being about conformity. Let me explain the difference here. Because this is one really big place that the Christian religion, I think, has struggled over time. An argument can be made that ever since the church became the religion of empire with Constantine, there has been a great push towards conformity. The church has pushed people who are seeking God to believe the same thing and act the same way, to say the same words. The church has pushed people to say certain words, believe particular things. People in this church, we've joked about, what's the list of the top 10 things that you have to check off if you're going to be a Christian? Some churches, you got to believe this, you got to believe this, you got to say this, you got to say this, right? We try to be different here, right? But what is lost in that is the uniqueness of who we are, the uniqueness of how God has created us, the uniqueness of us as individuals. But often the leadership in the big church has pushed that confirming. We have to confirm what we believe to what certain leaders have said. Now, each of us has been created just as we are. Look around. I do this every once in a while. Look around and see if there's anybody else in this room that's exactly like you. Look on the screen. Oh, no. Okay, check it out. Right? And some of us have witty things to say about all this, right? But you're all beautiful. You're all unique. We say you're miraculously, creatively made by the divine. Well, what if I made you just be like Erik? Come on, you got to wear glasses like me. You got to stand like me. You got to talk like me. How boring would that be? And how impossible would it be? You have to believe just like I do. You have to pray just like I do. That wouldn't work. It might work for a second. It's a unique experience being me, so it might be fun for you. However, for the long term, it would not work well at all. So if the church is about conformity, we're in deep trouble. We are in deep trouble. So there's got to be a different way. And conveniently, thank God, spiritually, there is a very different way. Part of the power of this Pentecost story and why I came back to it today is that there's a great diversity of people gathered to hear those words. Incredible diversity. Anne-Marie was in our Bible study, and she has a little map in her Bible of all the different arrows from all those different places that no one likes to read except the pastor in that verse, right? All the different places people come from. It's from all over the world there. That was all over the known world. People from different areas on the map speaking different languages, and yet all of them could hear and all of them could understand. Miraculous. And yet not surprising when we're talking about spirit. When we talk about spirit, isn't she the great nudger, but also the great unifier? Because she gets us past, she nudges us past all those things that divide us, all the superficial crud that the world puts up that defines who we are. And she sees who we are in God's sight and encourages us to do the same. She's the one who speaks to all, who nudges all, who calls all people, and who seeks to transform all people. Also in our Bible study this week, there was the insight that the passage seems like a reversal of the Tower of Babel. Some of you will remember the Hebrew scriptures where the Tower of Babel is built up so that humans can be godlike. And in the metaphor, it's a metaphor, the tower falls and the people are divided into different groups. They speak different languages. They can't understand each other. Babbling, right? And they're divided. This is the opposite story. The Spirit is the restorer of our unity. She brings us back together, celebrating all the different languages. I mean, you don't hear people in the story saying, oh, I lost my language, now I speak English. No, we don't hear any of that. Oh, I understand. That brings people together. So here is a story of uniting people in a powerful way, to redo the story of division, that in the Spirit we are brought together to be found as one. And it is a symbol of what this new community of Spirit was supposed to be about and is supposed to be about. Now, it's very important that we understand this kind of community that the Spirit calls us to. It's a community of radical inclusivity, radical respect for each other, respecting our similarities and our differences, those things that make us truly who we are, those things that make us unique. Isn't that kind of radical inclusivity what love is all about, after all? When we love someone, we open our hearts to them, we welcome them in. We don't, most of the time, notice all their differences. Right? That love is a bridge over those waters. And as much as the Spirit calls us to this radical inclusivity, we see a world and we live in a world where divisiveness rules the day. And we were reminded of this again on Friday as we celebrated Juneteenth and the announcement of the freeing of slaves in America. And no matter how many people in this country try to rewrite that history, enslaving human beings is atrocious, layered on brutal, layered on deeply violent and abhorrent, and should never, ever happen. Should not have happened and should never happen. And it's the complete and total opposite of the freedom that the Spirit calls people to, and the complete and total opposite of what Jesus called to love our neighbors is all about. And Christianity not only participated in convincing people of African descent that they were less than Europeans, but also even less than humans. That system continued to try to force people to conform to the elite white ideal. And if they couldn't, they were enslaved or killed or abused on so many atrocious levels. Clearly, this system of conforming to white and elite is still in action today. We see it playing out. There are people who are very clear that this administration, under whom we are living now, is striving for just this once again. So let's be clear how badly this system divides people. This is the opposite of the spiritual unity that we are supposed to be getting to. Our systems and structures are still geared to perpetuate that opposite of unity, that division, that subjugation, that lack of unity. And still powerfully entrenched in the understanding of conforming to a misguided system of seeing and dividing and condemning human beings. It's clearly not the way of Spirit. And yet so many people fall into that trap. And we've all been part of the system. I want to know how people who claim to be spiritual can, in the very next breath, condemn whole groups of people who are different than they are. We see this throughout the world right now. I read again this week about the culture wars within our country, which politicians are gearing up to use to their advantage in the fall. How do we pit one group against another so that we win? How do we diminish one group so that my group can hold power? Are we going to fall for it again? Or will people of Spirit finally stand up and let Spirit guide us to a larger understanding of our connection with folks who may look differently or speak differently or eat differently from us? One of the very exciting things to me in the political sphere right now is that it seems that there are some very inclusive politicians that are starting to run campaigns based on caring for everyone in their district. Who knew? Crazy. The new mayor of New York. How about the soon-to-be mayor of Washington, D.C.? They're running on making things affordable for everyone, getting health care for everyone, standing up for everyone against the rich and the elite. And guess what? They're finally winning. People may be shifting enough. Maybe. We'll see. But it certainly feels in line with what the Spirit is longing for us to somehow get to. And this unity that we find in the story of the Spirit and in the Spirit herself binds us together in community while still celebrating our unique gifts and attributes. When we don't have to conform, we can blossom. Don't you find that when somebody acknowledges who you are and your giftedness, you're like, oh, well, maybe I can try something. Maybe I'll try something different. Maybe I'll step out a little bit in a new way. That's what the Spirit's trying to get us to do as a community. We can find a deep unity in the midst of our diversity. We can find that Spirit who holds us together, who binds us together in grace and in hope and in beauty and in love. And Westhope, this is what we're called to be. Can we be this community of Spirit that sees everyone as our equal? Right on. It takes work, but it's what we're supposed to strive for. One of the beautiful and powerful ideas that we are exploring in our social justice training is that my liberation is tied up in your liberation. Is tied up in the liberation of people in San Jose. It's tied up in the liberation of Palestinian people. It's tied up in the liberation of Iranian people. It's tied up in the liberation of Russian people. Can we get there? There's a beautiful equality and equity in that understanding. A beautiful connection that can only be found, in my opinion, only found in Spirit. Only found by Spirit. Can we somehow find our common humanity as well as our common divinity? We may all see God differently, fine. But can we celebrate our connectedness in that? That you may call God source, I may call God holy, you may call God him, you may call God her. Okay, fantastic. But can we be connected? That we are pursuing God. We are pursuing holiness, and then that we are to embody holiness. Just as that prayer practice did. I know it's hard for some folks, but we are to embody holiness in this world. That's to be us. So whether it's the New York Knicks working together, or Westhope Presbyterian Church honoring one another, we are called to be the beloved community of Spirit, seeing one another, not as the world sees. I say this every Sunday in our closing circle. Don't see as the world sees. See as the Spirit sees. See as the Spirit acknowledges. See as the Spirit holds us. That we may be grounded ever more fully in our uniqueness, in our blessedness, and in the blessedness of all. May it be so today. May it be so always. Amen. Amen.